Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., I knew I had lost control. I had no more battalions or companies, just single tanks fighting for survival by themselves. I called Eitan on the radio and asked to retreat. In my previous 3 videos, I described the Battle of the Golan Heights in the south from Saturday until Monday night, October 1973. But what happened during this time in the north sector? The Konetra Valley is a large flat plateau, almost 15 kilometers wide, as if by design suitable for large tank offensives. Israel had 2 hills overlooking the valley. One was the Hermonite Mountain, the second was the Booster Ridge. This is how the valley looked like from the Syrian side. In all the war games Israel conducted before the war, it was clear the main Syrian effort would be in this region. 3 days before the war, the IDF Chief of Staff finally got permission from the Minister of Defense to reinforce the Golan with the 7th Tank Brigade. When war broke out, the 74 Battalion from 188 Brigade was responsible for the north sector, from 109 post to 104 post. The 53rd Battalion was in charge of the south. The 7th Brigade had 82nd, 77th and 75th Battalions. Since Bengal received 71st Battalion from the tank school, he was ordered to send 82nd Battalion to help in the south. Saturday afternoon, the North Sector Commander Bengal had about 154 tanks at his disposal. At 5 minutes to 2, under heavy artillery barrage, the Syrian special tanks cleared the mine and bridged the anti-tank ditches. Syria's 52nd Infantry Brigade managed in the evening to have some forces beyond the border at the abandoned village of Al-Qahtaniya. The Syrian 85th Brigade bridged the anti-tank ditches in the center, and the Moroccan Brigade plus 68 Infantry did the same in the north. The 52nd Battalion had some success and managed to have a few dozen tanks west of the border. At nightfall, the Syrian 68 and 85 Brigade used their night vision capabilities to get closer to the Israeli tanks' position. While IDF artillery ran out of star shells by midnight, small fires from damaged tanks and the dry vegetation illuminated enough of the Syrian advance for the Israelis to repel the night attacks. The Syrians prepared extremely well for the offensive and used the terrain to advance. This is how it looked like from the Hermonite Hill. The dry creek called Shabrak is mostly hidden from the hill, making it easy for the Syrian tanks to advance close enough to the point the Israeli centurions will not be able to lower their guns. And this is how it looked like from the Booster Ridge. While one can have a good view of the valley, hidden creeks and small hills will obscure most of the tanks' columns. Since the Israeli defense in the south of the Golan crumbled at the first day of the war, all reinforcement the IDF could muster was sent to the south. The regular army tanks in the north had to make do with what they had. Without getting into too much detail, after bitter fighting for 3 days, the Syrian army failed to gain ground in the north. By Monday night, they were also driven out of their achievement in the south. For Assad, this was alarming. While the Egyptians looked content with their achievement in Sinai, it was clear the attention of Israel would be dedicated wholly to Syria. Assad had to gamble on some ground gained before the IDF tanks will threaten Damascus, barely 40 kilometers away from the border. According to official Syrian sources, on Monday, Omer al-Abrash, the 7th Division commander, died attacking the enemy. Less official sources, and probably more reliable, state he was executed by an Alawi officer sent to replace him. All through Monday night, Syrian commando equipped with Sagers and RPG infiltrated the valley. They attacked the Israelis' night position, who had to give up on refilling their tanks or sleep after 3 days of continuous fire. By Tuesday morning, the Syrians began the worst artillery barrage of the war, raising clouds of dust and smoke. With the sun in their eyes, the 55 Israeli tanks remained from the original force, couldn't fire back and had to retreat from the higher ground. Almost without interruption, the Syrian attacked in 3 efforts. First in the south by 52nd Infantry Brigade and 43rd Tank Brigade. The second in the north undertaken by 68 Infantry, the Moroccan Brigade, and the Independent Tank Battalion from Assad Republican Guard Tank Force. Those brigades attacked the Israeli tanks at Mount Hermonite. The third and main attack was in the center with 85th Infantry, 78 armored, 121 mechanized, and the fresh 81st Tank Brigade from 3rd Armored Division. Overall, an estimated 170 tanks, an unknown number of armored vehicles attacked simultaneously. From the first hours of the attack, the Israeli tanks were overwhelmed. Dust and smoke from the heavy bombardment covered the valley, as well as direct sunlight, which prevented any efficient targeting of Syrian tanks as they slowly gained ground and took a hold on the position previously held by the Israeli tanks. So effective was the Syrian Roland barrage that in some of the cases the range of fire were just a few tens of meters, point blank in tank terms. The 9th Company fired at the tanks coming from the Shabrak Creek. Southside A Company fired at the Syrian 43rd and 52nd Brigade. The 75th Battalion held the center with 25 tanks. It is unclear if it was the lack of ammunition or the pressure was too much. By 8:30, the Israeli line started to give way. Ben-Gal now faced a brutal dilemma. If he kept his forces, he would soon be surrounded and decimated. Organized retreat to a second line of defense would be very difficult under so much enemy fire. It would mean leaving behind the higher ground, not to mention the moral effect on his exhausted crews. After a few nerve-wracking minutes, Ben-Gal took the third option. He decided to double down. He called Kahalani and gave him command of the entire valley. While Kahalani with 8 tanks closed the distance to the front, Ben-Gal asked his strategic reserve force of 3 tanks to join in and call Retes, the 71st Battalion commander, which was firing at the Syrian from the Hermonite mountain. He ordered him to assist the weakened defense in the center. Retes immediately understood what it meant with these 4 tanks to charge the mass in front of him. It's a suicide mission, he said. If it wasn't from you, I wouldn't do it. Ben-Gal had no choice. If the Syrians would reach Quneitra-Masada Road, 7th Brigade would be outflanked and lost. Retes managed to hit 3 T-62s before he was killed in his tank. In an act of despair, Ben-Gal ordered Kahalani to take back the higher ground at the Booster Ridge. Ben-Gal feared his forces would crumble down. If it will happen, nothing will stop the Syrian taking the north sector and probably the rest of the Golan. He called Eitan, 36th Division commander, and asked to retreat. Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., I knew I had lost control. I had no more battalions or companies, just single tanks fighting for survival by themselves. Eitan urged him to hold on a few minutes more until Ben Hanan could assemble 11 tanks that remained from what used to be 188 Brigade. As the Syrians' Roland barrage slowly decreased, Kahalani could see the first Syrian tank slowly taking hold on the ridge, and behind them the rest of 81st Tank Brigade. Kahalani ordered his 8 remaining tanks under the ridge to charge the hill just to notice that no one moved. Once again he gave the order, and so his exhausted crews, after 4 days of continuous fire, were not too keen to charge a numerically superior enemy on a higher ground. In his desperation, he shouted down the radio, "Take a good look at the Syrians. See how brave they are." Finally, his tanks moved on with him. The battle that took place on that ridge looked like the tank version of a Western shootout, with tanks shooting at each other, point-blank range, behind boulders, and from all sides. At the end of the charge, Kahalani, with only 4 tanks remaining, took control of the ridge. At the valley below, there were first signs of the Syrians' attack breaking down. Tanks started to retreat, and tank crews jumped out of their tanks looking for cover on the ground. By 11 a.m., it was clear the Syrian attack had failed. After 4 days of continuous fire, there were no more Syrian tanks at the Israeli side of the Golan. More than any other battle of the war, this battle captivated the Israeli public. It epitomized how the politician hubris left a group of young men, barely in their twenties, to fight against all odds and save a nation from a catastrophe. The price, however, was immense. Hundreds were killed, thousands were injured. Almost an entire generation of officers and tank crews were lost.